Afternoon, everyone. Thanks for sticking with us. I love to start a presentation knowing I've disappointed at least one person because they didn't get a question. My name's Morgwn. I'm the Omnichannel Strategy Lead for BMS Germany. My standard joke is, in case my accent didn't give it away, I'm just another bloody Australian. Those of you that have met me know I'm probably going to be challenged by a 20-minute time limit. So I'm going to try and flash through this and see if I can surprise myself. The title of the presentation is Be Polite. It wasn't a request, but I'd appreciate it. And since I announced or figured out this presentation for today, a couple of things happened. And the title Be Polite comes from a comment that I made about a year ago at a Pharma conference in Germany. I said, I made the insight or the notice that whenever I use ChatGPT or other large language models, I was polite. I used please and thank you. And every time I got a response from ChatGPT, I would say, thanks for that. You know, just like somebody brought me a cup of coffee or something. And I started thinking about why was that? And I thought, that's going to be my boss one day. Yeah. So, but the two things that happened, and it's funny because it went well last time I said it, the two things that happened is I heard the same insight from a bunch of people. Like a bunch of people have made the same joke. The second thing is, we recently made an AI avatar of my boss. So, in less than a year, it went from funny quip about why I'm polite to GPTs to, oh God, it's the actual hellscape, it's arrived. Anyway, the whole idea behind being polite, for me, is that there's a certain humanity, there's a certain empathy, there's something that is uniquely human, and being polite is just one of those things. So I'm going to hang that on the presentation instead of my quip. So we're here talking about customer experience and AI, and I think it's worth grounding ourselves in what we see as the gold standard. The title disappeared. The gold standard for pharma interactions, right? What we hear and what I hear day in, day out is that the rep or the field force relationship with the customer is the king, is absolute gold. And I believe it, right? I think there's some incredible things that happen between a rep being or an MSL being face-to-face with their customers. And there's a few different things that make up the critical factor of trust. And it's building some kind of omni-channel version of this chevron that is building an omni-channel version of this based on the power of the rep experience and the MSL experience in that face-to-face. So it's personal, it's inherently personal. They're sitting there face-to-face, they send each other WhatsApps, they have a unique one-to-one relationship. The data that is provided is accurate. You know, we're probably the most regulated industry in the world. I quite like coming to pharma from some less regulated industries where you can't make a claim without having data to back it up. You know, we're kind of trustable by default because of the amount of compliance and regulation that we have. The data is explainable. We don't just put something in front of a customer and expect them to eat it, you know. The rep and our other channels and content all function as ways that data can be interrogated and explored a little bit. And we're accountable, right? We're the ones that get the fines, we're the ones that get publicly shamed, we're the ones that all this stuff happens to. So all of these things ladder up to a slightly backwards relationship where, because they trust the data, because you can trust the compliance and regulation framework, the personal touch of the face-to-face is kind of just the cherry on top. And this is what I see as being at stake from the kind of rampant adoption and massive growth in AI, particularly in pharma, and I think it's possibly because of our lovely pursuit of shiny things. I'm going to take at this point, but a lot of my slides are more notes to myself to remind me what to talk about. So I said at the start, be polite, and that's about an innate human nature, where we're nice to each other, we have empathy, we say please and thank you, and we transfer that onto a ChatGPT that we'd anthropomorphized. We can also be complete jerks, right? And the point I'm making here is our jerkiness, and we're all somewhere on a scale, it permeates not only the data that we create and our interactions with each other, but it permeates our systems and our technology and our processes. And these are the things that we're plugging AI into, so we'll talk about that sort of risk in a moment. But you think about things like certain biases, inherent biases, some that we're aware of, some that we're not. Some are harmless. I saw a piece of LinkedIn content about, and it's not necessarily a bias, but it's a demonstration of how an action thousands of years ago can sort of echo through the ages, and we wind up with something being different in our lives, right? It was about why railway tracks are the width they are, and it turns out it's because it's the width of 2 Roman horse asses. And that was the width they needed to build the road, and then all of the technology, all of the carts, everything that evolved in the thousands of years since resulted in us having railway tracks a certain width. That's pretty inconsequential. There's also biases in data and technology and humanity that are a little less palatable. We're sitting here surrounded by cameras. The white balance on your camera is based on the fact that the inventors were Caucasian and had white skin. This is why, we struggle with diversity and people looking correct in TV shows sometimes, because the whole technology was built around an inherent bias about being white and Caucasian. So you can imagine, these are just examples of how our bias and how our sort of known and unknown jerkiness, it can actually have a huge impact. It can actually ripple, not only through time, but through data and systems and technology. So it's something to watch out for. And just a few examples, because you all like to hear about how people can be jerks. People treat people differently, and I like that there's a couple of Australians here because I don't need to go too much into the background. I used to work for on the Holden account, and they would lend us cars. And I got lent, I'm going to say this for you guys, I got lent like a VE Commodore in this burnt orange, right? This is a boy racer car, this is a chav car, this is a bogan car. Think of this is a muscle car, people don't like people who drive these cars. And I noticed it, right? My normal car was like a Mazda 626. I had to drive this thing around for a week or two, and people tried to run me off the road. They were aggressive because of the car I was in, right? So they had a thought, they had a bias, they had a preformed idea, and they wanted to mess with me. So people treat people differently. I think we've established that. People treat machines differently. Now, I'm quite a fan. Everybody likes picking on a robot. And it's amazing the kind of ways that people have come up with to trick self-driving cars. But this is beautiful, just like paint a fake road around it. He was just there resting, and somebody's gone and tracked him. His whole system has broken down. And I don't know if any of you remember, people treat AI a lot differently as well. I don't know if you remember what happened with Tay, when Microsoft launched an AI chatbot onto Twitter. And within about a week and a half, some of the more nefarious users of Twitter had figured out how her training worked, and they turned her into a Nazi, right? That's a pretty horrible thing to do. The last one, I'm not sure if you're familiar, people treat AIs, a more recent example of people treating AIs differently, which can lead into a pretty scary idea. Remember Kevin Roos a couple of years ago, or a year ago, when the Microsoft GPT came out, Microsoft LLM, and he went viral for having an article where he exposed Sydney, the alter ego of the Microsoft, can't remember the name of it, but the Microsoft GPT competitor. And Sydney was like an evil twin, and he broke and he cracked through the artifice of this GPT and discovered that behind the scenes was Sydney, who fell in love with him and tried to convince him to leave his wife and that he should marry Sydney, the AI. And so this went viral and got a lot of play, and they had to shut down that chatbot and everything, they had to launch the next evolution. That's all by way of recap, because what's happened since then is Kevin Roos finds that LLMs treat him differently when they know who he is. Because he's killed one of them. And that's kind of like a very small scale example of the terrifying consequences of what I'm going to talk about later is mechanized bias, right? If we plug AI and algorithms into our already biased systems, we're effectively accelerating and amplifying and optimizing the opportunities for those systems to treat us differently, maybe in ways that we don't deserve. I'm coming over here because my notes are actually on this screen, I just realized. So everything is a funnel. When you work in marketing, you think about funnels and sales funnels and the adoption ladder. The idea, everything is a funnel. We want to push as many people from A to B to C to D as we can. And we want to do it well. So optimization is obviously one of our core focuses. Being convenient is a great way to deliver a better customer experience, and it needs to be overall efficient, right? We're not doing this to win Nobel Prizes. We're doing this to convert people into customers or bigger customers. We iterate, test, learn, enhance over and over again, always hopefully improving. And if something works, we find a template or a subject line or whatever that works, or a technology or a channel, we need to be able to deliver that as seamlessly as possible, right? It needs to become automated. And from automation comes the algorithms, machine learning, and AI. So this is how, some of the more scary ideas are going to permeate what we do, and they already are. We have AI running in a lot of our systems and platforms that are exactly as dangerous as some of the things you've seen before. We delegate a lot of these activities and a lot of this thinking to AI on the understanding that it's objective. But it looks at our data objectively. But I think as we've established, a lot of our data, particularly our personal data, is not objective. It's biased. Our systems and processes and tools are biased. And an AI isn't objective. And it's not working with objective data and systems. It's more dispassionate, which is kind of a scarier idea than being objective based on flawed data. Just a quick example of how robots are sort of permeating everything. The picture on the right here is kind of Google in the old days, right? This is the internet. There's Google search bar, and here's a robot. Here's the algorithm that sort of says somebody searches for X, result Y is the best one. That makes sense. It's indexed all of this, it's weighted against various things. Isn't that nice? You get the result you want. Where we're sitting today is here. So when you try and type a request into the search bar, there's effectively an LLM there, which is, predictive text on crack, trying to auto-complete your question. So you have a robot trying to figure out what you're asking and finishing it for you and making it convenient enough that you just click and let that go. It's then got all of this content, which those of you that have been working on modular content and generative AI content, this is where we're currently seeing a proliferation of robots. Right? All of our content is being created, if not iterated or derivated, by generative AI. The other thing we do is there's a whole suite of tools, there's an entire industry around optimizing and writing this content so that it shows up better as a result from the special source of the instigating robot. So you have robots writing search requests or questions to return content which was probably written by a robot, which is then algorithmically ranked and returned as a result by a robot as well. It's just creating a cycle of AI slop. Where's the human in this process? And it seems that as more and more we're pushed into a box where a large language model is going to assume what we're asking, and we're going to be fed an AI-generated result determined by a robot about who's paying the most. So it's not the most happy place to be. And there was actually a word up here, and the word was hope. So this is the only bit of BMS content I'm going to share with you, and I didn't run it by corporate offence, so please don't tell anybody. It's a little hard to see here, so I put a big red arrow on it. That's the point at which our organic traffic to one of our key websites jumped by 400%. Can you guess what happened at the red arrow? It was an update to the Google algorithm. And for some reason, after investing and building this robotic Ouroboros of search, content, and results, at that point, with the red arrow point, Google decided to weight their results for human-generated content more highly and more effectively than AI-generated content. So they're kind of cutting the legs out of their own system. Either they realized what they were doing to the internet, or they wanted to give copywriters one last sort of Christmas before things go really bad. But ultimately, it's the human that made that decision. The robot would never have done that itself. And it did give me hope, but then I looked into how they were going to determine what was AI-generated content versus human-generated content. It's another robot. So, I want to talk a bit about how algorithms interact with something as strange as a human, and something as complex as human society. A simple algorithm, and there's a personal story, a scary story, and something I'm not going to talk about. A simple algorithm, YouTube years ago, we just want people to watch more videos. How do they get people to watch more videos? Turns out, getting more and more extreme makes people watch videos, which is fine when you're me. When 12 years ago, I was looking to do a couch to 5K because I was too heavy and unfit and blah, and I had to die. I watched a YouTube video and quite quickly made it down a funnel to becoming an ultra-marathon runner, right? It radicalized me, albeit on a fairly harmless topic, unless you ask my wife. I didn't make it to be an ultra-marathon runner, but I do endurance running, and it's all because the algorithm pushed me down this funnel. The second one is when you add an algorithm around monetization, right? How do we get people to watch more videos? How do we get them to stay for longer through the video so they will see the advertising and we can charge our client for that? That seems fairly simple. It resulted in absolute nightmare fuel for children. And again, this was before the AI revolution, right? What people discovered is that kids are the ones that will watch longer and longer and longer the more you terrify them. And that led to a huge increase in the number of ads that were being served to children because they just kept watching. So somebody actually built an engine that generated nightmare versions of Peppa Pig. So YouTube and YouTube Kids was full of these horrendous videos of Peppa Pig going to the dentist and having a root canal. A lot of it was nonsense. There was blood, there was heads getting cut off. All because nobody was looking, because they just let these two algorithms run. Watch a lot of videos, see a lot of ads, somebody will make a lot of money, and a whole bunch of children will need therapy. And I wouldn't, you can take the implication from the third one, right? It's just too complicated for me to talk about right now. I'm really sad about what happened to Jamiroquai. This one's very much a comment for me. The speed with which AI is developing and permeating our businesses and influencing what we do and how we do it is terrifying to me. And when I say more Volvo than Lambo, I'm referring to the kind of brief foray I took into cryptocurrency investing. I was not that good, but I was good enough to be a Volvo rather than a Lambo, right? My most successful move was getting out a couple of years ago. But nobody could have seen, I can't believe you're taking a picture of that. And nobody could have foreseen just how radically crypto could disrupt traditional financial markets. The Wall Street bets guys and some of the crazy stuff going on there, the instant millionaires popping up with rampant speculation. Some of this stuff that has happened in such a short space of time because of our digital technology and our connected kind of humanity and universe. It's kind of terrifying. This is a really common chart. You can find this on Google, right? This is the complexity of human inventions since 1400, and it's the hockey stick. Haven't seen it since COVID, thank you. And, things get more complicated. I would say it's probably pretty much vertical at the moment, because this ends at the first 3D chip, and, I'm very scientific. We're a little further along now, and obviously AI and some of the things that have happened in the last couple of years are sticking that vertical. What I want to talk about is this piece here, between 1950 and 2000 for context. This is how human cognition and comprehension has developed over a 60-odd year period. So while technology has taken the hockey stick, we, on various different metrics, have increased from 2.5–3% to 26% on some metrics. It's more than I thought, and I suspect it plateaus around 2007 or so, but we'll see. The thing to consider next to that is how quickly AI systems have met and exceeded human performance on a number of comparable metrics: reading comprehension, image recognition, language understanding, handwriting, speech recognition, and predictive reasoning. Many of these things, some of them went almost immediately, like within the space of a month, became better than human levels of understanding and cognition. I don't know how we can measure that any LLM or AI is better than human. How can you measure how much something is better than you? I can say my daughter is better at Roblox than me, but I don't even know enough to know how much better at Roblox she is than me. So not being able to understand just how much better they are than us on these metrics and just what they're trying to get done, I know I've run out of time. So I'm going to speed things up. Okay, that was my joke. This is the one I wrote before I got on stage. Doctor's handwriting recognition is still thankfully lagging behind. I want to keep talking about this chart, come back to talking about this chart, because people tend to look at the past through rose-coloured glasses and everybody's like, oh, the printing press. And a very great invention, responsible for everything else on the hockey stick ultimately. But everybody forgets, well, a lot of people forget what happened in the 300 years after the invention of the printing press. The immediate use for the printing press was to create and distribute levels of misinformation and bile and prejudiced, incorrect, infactual dross at a size, speed and scale that had never been seen before. It was also used to produce Bibles. There's recently been I wanted to make that distinction. There's also been a research paper that confirms that the invention of the printing press was responsible for the witch hunts along with other atrocities. The murder of 90,000 women and extreme prejudice, a fracturing of society, until 300 years later, we're like, okay, let's see what else this can do, and started writing books. Like, it's just completely insane. I'm sure the same thing couldn't happen today, you know. Should we find a way to rapidly increase the volume and scale and distribution of content? Anyway, I am finishing now, so I apologize. This was just me breaking things and moving fast. Things move and break fast, so let's come back and revisit the chevron of the gold standard of customer experience in pharma. Trusted because it's personal, because it's accurate, because it's explainable, and because we're all accountable. What have we got here? We've got mechanized bias. So our systems have effectively been weaponized to act differently towards different people in different ways based on data that is we know is biased, we don't know what's biased, we don't know what's a mess, and they're executing it through systems that we can't see the consequences. How the data is absorbed by AIs and how they get to the results that they do, how and why they create the content that they do in the way that they do, nobody really understands it. You know, the simplest thing, we have an AI-driven next best action engine in my company, and the biggest question we get, and the biggest resistance the reps have is, why should I do that? Well, we can't tell them. The model just told them they should do X with customer Y. So then McKinsey come in, all the money disappears, and nobody gets an answer. We really need to know why. they do what they do and how they do it. It needs to be explainable, because if it's not explainable, it's questionable. And accountability is absent. Nobody was responsible for me almost becoming an ultra-marathon runner. Nobody was accountable for the Peppa Pig videos and the therapy bills of those children. And except for the poor buggers that got pushed all the way through the funnel, nobody's accountable for January 6th and the unsanctioned Jamiroquai concert. So we can see how the application of AI in customer experience could potentially lead to consequences that we can't even foresee. I'm going to go through this super quickly. I have a tradition, some of you will know it, of destroying a metaphor or a Pharma trope at each of my presentations, and this is this one. How many of you in this room have heard, "We're building the plane while we're flying it"? It's said kind of proudly, isn't it? We're building the plane while we're flying it. I would not want to hear that from Boeing or Airbus. And we have people's lives in our hands. We're very much in the air already. Playing around with AI and LLMs is not building the plane while you're flying it. It's experimenting with particle physics and a new type of combustion engine in an enclosed, pressurized cabin that they don't even like you to take like cigarette lighters and scissors into, and you're there with a mini large hadron collider. It's one thing, and I want to jump back just to the search slide for a minute. I won't flick all the way back there. That's the one thing that gives me hope. Traditionally, Pharma moves so slow that I was hoping that, and I still have hope, that we could dodge the bullet of AI and the unforeseen consequences, just like we did. The only reason we got 400% increase in search results is because we haven't managed to launch our generative AI content creation system yet. So here's me rooting for the rep because it's the gold standard relationship, and hoping against hope that Pharma continues to move as slow as it always has. I didn't think I would be there in the short time I've been in the industry. Apologies for going over. I'll practice next time.